Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to the Seating Chart Maker. In this unique training, I'm going to show you how to create your own seating chart, whether it's for events, restaurants, or any type of occasion, and you can easily add any type of table. We have rectangular tables, we have round tables, we have square tables, and we have fixtures. You're also going to be able to select from any type of event, and also we're going to be able to add guests, add table details. It's going to be an incredible training. I can't wait. Let's get started. All right, thanks so much for joining us. Like I said, we've got a lot to cover. We've got brand new seating chart maker. I'm going to show you how you can make this seating chart for any type of occasion. We've got a lot of information here. This is so flexible. We're going to show you how to hide panels. We're going to show you how to create this seating chart, create multiple different dimensions, have multiple events where you can just simply select on an event and show which tables are open. We'll be able to assign guests to different tables. We'll be able to assign seating time, number of seats, reservations, table notes, and we'll be able to update that table. Also be able to add guests very easily just by clicking add guests. It's going to add the guest to the table. Really a lot to show you. I can't wait. We're going to take care of this for you, and we're going to show you every step of the way. If you do like these trainings, I create these each and every Tuesday. I only ask a couple of things. It's very simple. I just ask you to subscribe to the channel. That's going to make sure that you get notified each and every Tuesday. Don't forget to click on that notification icon bell. That's going to alert you of these brand new trainings. The workbooks are absolutely free. All you need to do is click on the link down below, and we'll get you that either through email or your Facebook. I'll get this workbook to you absolutely for free. So that's great. And of course, if you can just like, share, and of course comment on the video, I really appreciate that. Your likes, comments, and shares help move this up in the standings and make sure to get you the training that you need so that YouTube will know that these are the important trainings. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate all your following. All of this is free. But if you do like to support us, a great way to do that is with our 150 workbook pack. That's a zip file of 150 of my best Excel applications. It's just 37 cents per workbook, bringing total to just $56. That would really help us out. I really appreciate that. That keeps these trainings free each and every Tuesday. I want to bring you the best. So this week, like no other, we're going to create something that I've never created before. This is the first time we're going to have the ability, like I said, to add different tables. If you want to have a rectangle table, we have 16, 12, 8 seats or whatever we want, and then we'll give it automatically assign a table number. Just click add a table. If we want a circle table or round table, select the number of seats and just click add table. It's going to add that table. We can then drag that wherever we want in our little restaurant, and you can add any type of fixture. Just enter a fixture name here, click on the add fixture, and it's going to automatically add a fixture. You can then drag that fixture anywhere you want around here, and you can automatically just rename it. You could even call it counter or anything you want here. So it's going to be an amazing training. We've got a lot to cover, so why don't we go ahead and get started on that, and I'll show you the makeup of how we did this. We've got a lot to go over. I'm going to try to get this to you within an hour. Again, this type of training is so comprehensive. There's so many macros and features. I couldn't possibly pack all of these features in and build it live. I know you guys love me to build those things from scratch, but the simpler applications, of course, I'm going to do. But in this one, I'm going to walk you through every macro, every line of code, every step, every shape, and show you just how we did that. So first we're going to go from a high level, the concept, what we're trying to do, and then we're going to dig deeper into the code and macros. So we're going to start out very high and then dig deeper so you can understand exactly how I did this. So let's go over some of the concepts of this. Basically what I want to do is give the user the ability to create as many tables, different table types as we want. And then what we'll do is as the code creates those tables, we will then let them drag it out, and then we can select on a specific table and have those table details. So if we want to put in a seating time here or anything we want, we can do that. And then we can also put in a reservation number and then some notes here, and also we can just click add a table, and once we add that table and update that, it's going to automatically mark that, of course, as occupied, and then we'll have number of open tables are going to change automatically based on that. So that's basically the concept. We also want to create brand new events. So if we click on an add new event, we can select a different event date. Let's just say Debbie's wedding, can set a date, and we have, of course, 15 open tables, and let's see, wedding dress. Nice. Okay, so then we can click save event. That's going to save the event, and we automatically have a list of events. If we want to show a list of events, we've got a list of events. So here we have Debbie's wedding. We select on an event, it's going to show all the open tables and all the occupied tables for any specific event, the one we just created, Debbie. So if we want to simply create a specific occupied table on that, we can also add guests to that table. So we can put a seating time, we can leave that blank, we can put in, let's just say 10 p.m. if we want to put a seating, and then maybe we want to add guests. So in this particular table, we want to add a number of guests. So we can add Fred's a favorite. He loves weddings and he loves wedding cake. So like me, so we can click add the guest. It's going to add that guest. We can select a guest and then remove the guest. So we can add number of guests to a table and update the table. Now we have on table 2 Fred. So we select table 1, we're not going to show any. Select table 2, Fred's going to show up. So we can also put in a list. So we've got a lot to cover on this one. So let's go over some of the sheets. The first thing we've got is an admin, and that's going to basically just keep track of all the we just have the table types, simple list. We have rectangular, square, and circle. Those are the 3 types of tables: rectangular, circle, and square. And each one of those has a number of types of parties. So for example, if I want to put in, let's customize the design, select on a rectangle. Here, rectangle, we can have 16, 12, 8, and 6 number of seats, and it's going to assign table number 16, or you can customize that for whatever table. The round table, of course, has 12, 10, 8, 6, and 4 number of seats. So even if we just want to put in a round table, we can add in a 4, and that's going to add it in right here. We can put it anywhere we want. And of course, if we want to remove that, I wanted to add something, but I ran out of time. I've already put it 2.5 days. I wanted to put a little X there. That's a nice little challenge for you. If you want to delete a table, of course, we can delete it from here. And of course, all we could do is just delete it from here. That'll work too. But I wanted something even better than that, but didn't get a chance to cover it. So what I wanted was a little X. When I select this, put a little X up here. That's a nice challenge for you. Put an X up here. When you select that, click that X, it'll ask you, do you want to delete it? If so, it will delete the shape, and all we need to do is then remove it from this line here, locate it and remove it. So that's pretty simple. That's a little challenge to you. See if you can get that done. Let me know in our Excel for Freelancers groups if you've done that, and show me the code on that. Or you don't have to if you don't want to share the code. That's up to you because it's your hard work. But that's my idea. My challenge for you is to take this one level up and delete the table. So all you need to do is put a little X here and click delete, and it will remove that table. I wanted to get to it but didn't get a chance. So many features to show you. All right, let's continue on. So that's what I'd like to do. So selecting a table is going to allow us to do that. If we update the table or save it, it's going to turn that color, and so we know it's also going to adjust the table. So we have that. Also in our admins, we have a list of table types and seats. Our rectangular, we have 16, 12, and 8. Our circle, we have 12, 10, and our square. So this is the number of seats per table. Now, where do we get that from? Let's take a look at that. Now, we're going to start out with some templates. That's the best way to do it. We have table templates. So if we slide all the way over here, we can take a look at that. Okay, so basically what we have is we have a 16 seat rectangular, a 12 seat rectangular, 8 and 6. And so what I want to do, I've given these specific names: rectangle 16, rectangle 12, circle 12, circle 10, the numbers, of course, based on the number of seats, and then square 12, square 10. And then we have our fixture sample here. That's our fixture sample. So that's all of our templates. So basically what we need to do is when we create a new table, determine which one it is, duplicate that, rename it. So for example, let's say we create this, rename it based on the table number. So we're just going to call this table 3. We're going to call this table 4. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take that number and place it directly inside the text, inside that table, and then we're going to recolor them based on whether they're occupied or not, or they've been saved or not. So that's pretty much it. So we have the table numbers. In the events list, I've got a list of all the events. It's a very simple table. We've got an event ID, we've got an event name, we've got a date for the event, and then notes for the event. And we're going to just run some results in case we want to get a unique list of events, and that list right there is going to populate our list of events right here. So we got that, and we're going to sort them based on the date so that the newest one's going to appear at the top, the oldest one's going to appear at the bottom. So it gives us a great idea. So what else do we have? So once we have complete the events list, I've also have a list of tables. Now we can format this as the seating time, but we can put that probably as a string or a time if you want, but either one is going to be perfect. So either one, just put it general. Actually, let's put it as a time. If we want a time, we can do time like this. That'll do a time or string, which is fine. Cover the time. And we also have the reservation table and the table notes. That's for each individual table, but each individual table must contain an event ID, which specific event, and it also must contain a table number. We have to know which table number, and we also, so that's going to keep us. Then what we need to do, well, let's say we want to load in, let's put a few of them here back into the seating chart. Let's go in event, let's check this one out. I like this one. It's got 2 different events. So in this one, we've got two different tables that are occupied. So what we want to do is we're going to run an advanced filter, and based on the tables, it's going to return those two tables. So we know which tables have been used because in this specific event, event number 5, which is here and here, we've got table number 2 and 10 that are occupied. So we're just going to run that. And we also have the events guest list here. So again, in this case, what I want to do is I want to know the event ID, and then I want to know the specific table number. Notice there's no guest here. But if I select event 1 and perhaps table 1, we're going to have it. So if we take a look at that, I believe it was this one here, Fred's Wedding, that's going to be the event ID. And if I select a specific table, we then get the guest name. So table 1 has 3 guests assigned to it. So that means table 1, we're going to have 3 guests assigned to it. So those are the results. So then we're going to take those results and bring them back into the seating chart, bring them back right here, and then we'll be able to add guests onto that. All right, so that's pretty much it. That's as a high level of what we're going to be going to, adding events and saving events. So from a database and from a data, it's relatively simple. From design, it's relatively simple as long as we understand some of the concepts. So let's go into that and just see how we did. We also have just, the ability to hide the table. So let's go over that. So we can hide everything. If we just want to see the specific seating plan and we don't want to see anything else, we can do that. Then we can open it up. If we want to customize the design, we can. I need to set a scroll here so we don't have to scroll that. So we can automatically scroll through the VBA. We'll get to that. I'll add that on. It's called active window scroll column. We'll scroll to 1 or 3 or something like that. So that's going to automatically scroll to the left, which is what we want. We can add a table. So we want to do add a table. We can do add a table or add a fixture or anything like that. So let's go over and show how we show and hide some of these columns pretty easy and show the shapes. So let's go into the VBA and start seeing what we did. Before we do that, I just want to show you a few things what we have here on the side panel. This is going to be hidden. We have the selected event ID. And I want to know the selected event row. When we open up our events, let's take a look at some of the events here. I want to know what row, whether it's 5, 6, so I want to know which one. So we have to know the row. We're going to use conditional formatting. And so we have the selected event row. It's going to be based, that's the row that's in the database. When we look in the events list and we see row number 6, that is event 4 for the 6 p.m. dinner. That's the one we're focusing on. So event ID 4 is on row 6. And we're going to use a match formula. And I've created some named ranges. So let's go over some of the named ranges so we can familiarize yourself with how the data is structured in this. So we go into the formulas name manager and let's take a look at some of these. So first of all, I've created additional named ranges for the different types. So for example, circle, as you can see here, is going to be just these. That's going to help us for our drop-down list. If you remember, when I select circle, I want to know what available seats. We have a 12-seat table, we have a 10, 8, 6, and a 4. So I want to know that. So when I select a specific seat, when I select circle here, it's going to automatically take that. And so when I know circle is here, then what I want to do is I want to know 12, 10, 8. But if I select rectangle, then I want to know 16, 8, and 12. We can do that through the data validation. So when I go in data here, data validation here, we can see that it's rectangle. But as soon as I click a circle and go back into data validation, we see that it's now circle. So we change the data validation based on whatever was selected here. And square, as you can imagine, is going to change to square. So that means that all I need to do is create specific lists with those. And that's just what I've done here. We have a rectangle, we have here, we have circle, and we have square. So that's going to let us automatically set the seat numbers based on the type of table that's been selected. So that's just what we have. So back into the named ranges. So we've got that 3 different named ranges based on those shapes. So going back into the formulas name manager, we see circle. Now criteria, don't worry, those are created by VBA for our advanced filters, so we don't have to worry about those. Those are created automatically. We have events and event ID. That's going to use offset. It's going to be a dynamic named range. So if we take a look at that, we see it's based on events, all the events, and as that grows, it's going to grow. Using offset, starting in A2, we always want to start in the header row and then go move 1 down. We do that because if we started out in row 3 and there's no data, it's going to create an issue. Or if we delete the first row, it's going to create an issue. So we want to make sure that we include the header row and move it down 1. We're going to do the same thing with count. We're going to count the header row, but we're going to subtract 1. That's going to ensure that it is the right data. If we tab using the tab key, tab into it, we can see the dancing ants around to make sure. So we have event ID, events names based on the same offset concept, and we also have event ID that's in the event table. Notice they start out with different. different: events table and event ID. We also have events table and table number, so we can keep track of those. Extract, that's the same. Those are created by the advanced filters in VBA, so we can forget those right now. That's kind of an automated. We also have a guest list named range. If we tab over that, we know the guest list and the events ID. We also have the guest list, the seat number, that's going to be based on the seat numbers there. Also, we have guest list table number, so every guest list is going to have an event ID, the table number, and the seat number. We want to know all that. And then again, we have rectangle, that's the shape we went over, the square, we went over those. And then table numbers, I want to know that all the table numbers that we've created, so that's going to grow. All right, let me update this. This should be name, type, and seat. So now we've got that. Let's save that. So it's going to start out. That's why it's going to be based on this. So let's go back into their formulas, name manager, and then we'll go back down into tables, just where we were. Into table numbers we have here, so making sure we have there. And then we have table types here. Based on the table types, we want to know all the table types, rectangle, square. So that's it for the named ranges, and that's going to help us. So back into the seating chart. Now that we understand the named ranges, we can take a look at some of these formulas and understand how they work. So what I want to do in this case, I want to look up this selected event, which is event 4, and I want to look it up based on this event, and I want to extract the row number, which is 6. So we know the first one's going to start on row 3, so we're going to need to locate it. If we locate 1, I don't want the 1, I want actually 3, so we're going to add 2 to that to get the right row number. So we're going to use match. We're matching B3, events ID. We want the exact match, so it's going to be 0, and then we're going to add 2 onto that. So once we do that, and then it's automatically going to pull up the right row number. All right, we're going to move a little quicker on this one because we've got a lot to cover. I'm trying to keep these within an hour, so we'll move a little quicker. So again, the next event ID, we're going to use a max formula. We have the events ID, and then we're going to add 1. And then, of course, if there's an error, why would there be an error? There might be an error because there's no data. So if there's no data, we want to default it to 1. That would be the first event ID. Well, I want the event table row. We're going to use some product for this. This is a really cool formula. Basically, what I want to know is I want to know the event table. Notice this is table number 1, table number 2, table number 3. So I want to know what the event table is when we select a specific table. But I only want to know if it's been saved. If it hasn't been saved, if that table hasn't been saved, it's going to return 0. So let's pull up one where we have one, and we click here. We see now that the events table row is taken to 3. Basically, what I want to do is I want to look up in our table. I want to see where the event ID is 1 and where the table number is 1, and I want to return the row number. So when we look in the events table list here, we look for 1 and 1, right, where event ID is 1 and table 1, and I want to return the row. So that's exactly what I do. So we're going to use some product to do just that. So if I were to select another one, let's say number 12, and we know this one's been saved, but I want to know what row it's been saved, where 1 and 12. We're going to use some product. Determine where the event ID is 1, where the table number is 12, and return that row. In this case, it's 8. So that's just what I want. And we're going to use some product to do that. So in this case, it is 8. So how do we do that? We're going to use the sum product. We're going to determine, of course, where the event's ID is equal to B3. B3 is the 1. And where the table number is equal to J4, right? Where the table number, based on the events table. And also, I want to return the row. So in that one, we're going to return the row based on the events table and the event ID. That is going to extract the row. If not, it's going to either return 0 or blank if there's an error. So any table that we select that's not been saved is going to return 0, which is what I want. That's going to tell me that it's not currently saved. It doesn't have a row, so we need to create a new row when we save that. So that's how it works. That's how we do it. So we use some product to do just that. Okay, the next step, I want to know whether we're customizing or not. That's going to let us know. If we hide it, it's going to go to false. If we're in the custom, it's going to go to true. We want to know whether we're in custom. And also, I want to know the add mode. If we're adding one, right, we're in the add mode. Sometimes when we've added a table, it's going to go back to not. So this, once we add it, it's going to go back. We need to select actually number of seats. We can't add it there, and click add table. It's going to add it, and then it's going to go to false. So we know that everything gets cleared out when we select it. That's kind of a nice feature. Okay, well, we can delete that. We don't need that. I'm just going to delete that table, and of course, I'm also going to remove it from the admin list here. That's it. Okay, so now it's done there. So we have that also, the add table. That's going to tell us add mode true. I want to know the next table number, right? If we've added, what we're going to do is we have the table numbers in the admin list. Using the max, if I do the max plus 1, it's going to tell us 16. So I want to know what the next table number is. So again, we're going to do that. The max of the table numbers plus 1. If there are no table numbers, then of course we're going to default it to 1. All right, so that's up for that formula. The button add text, I want to show this is where we add table or add fixture. If I select a fixture, I want this to show add fixture. If we select a table, I want this button to show add table. So what we can do is you tie this button text to a specific cell. So I've tied the text of this button, making it dynamic. It's tied to B10. So B10 is going to have that. So whatever's in B10 is going to show up. So in B10, if D7 is the table type. If it says table type, then we're going to call it add table, otherwise add fixture. Because as soon as we click this, it's going to change to fixture name. So if it says fixture name, we're going to call it add fixture. That way we can use the same cells for both adding a fixture in there. So that's cool. I'm glad I got to show that to you. Continuing on, we need to know the next seat number. If I've selected a specific, I want to know the next seat number is 2. So again, we're going to use the max formula here. In this case, it would be 2. And in this case, it would be 4. In this case, the next one would be 4. All right, so that's it. That's going to tell us the next seat number. We're going to use the max based on the max of whatever's in this column here plus 1. So we also have the selected event row. Once we select a specific event, I want to know what row, because we're going to use conditional formatting. We may not get to showing you this because I've shown it in so many other videos and we got a lot to cover. All right, so I also want to use some product. I want to know the total, the table guests. How many total table guests? Not using some in this one. How many guests have been assigned? In this case, it's 1 or 0, but I want to know, let's pull up a specific one that's got some guests here. This one, let's take a look at this one here, has some guests here. So we've got some guests here, and I want to know the total guests, 3, because when I add a guest, I want to make sure that we don't hit the maximum. The maximum number of guests for this table is 12, so I want to keep track of that if we can't go beyond 12. And we've also used conditional formatting. This is kind of a cool trick. Conditional formatting is going to tell us this. So if I select something with a table with just 5, it's going to reduce the number to 5 here. And if I select a table with less seats, or let's pull up something that we can say we got a less seats, like let's say this one's only got, of course, 8. So we see only that there's 8 available. So this is a really cool trick. 8 seats available, 8 rows available here, based on the number of seats. As it grows, of course, it's going to grow. So it kind of is a visual of how many seats are available. All right, so we want to know that. I want to know how many total guests here have been booked. And then basically all we're going to do is we're just going to count everything in here. So if there's some guests, it's going to basically count. We need to know how many guests. And also the selected guest row. I want to know what row has been selected. When I select something here, this is going to change. You can use conditional formatting on that, so we know what guest, and we're going to load that guest up here. And the last is I want to know the guest database row. This is where we're going to be using some product. In this one, I want to know what row based on this ID, based on this table, and based on this seat number. So if I look in the guest, I want to know what the event ID, what the event table, and what the guest numbers. Once all those match, I want to know the rows. So for example, in this one, Laura Logan, that is going to be guest list number 5. So if we take a look at 5, we see here event ID 1, table number 1, seat number 3, Laura Logan. So I want to return that 5. We're going to use some product to return that row where those 3 are the case. Again, event ID is 1. Table ID is 1, seat number is 3. So let's look in that. So we're going to use the sum product. The guest list event ID is going to be B3. That's the event ID. Times the guest list, the table number is going to be J4. And the guest list seat number is going to be B15. This is the B15 here, right here. The guest selected guest seat number, B15. So when all of those are true, I want to return the guest list event ID. I want to return the row of that. And that's just going to do it, because when we make an update, if I change her name, and because when I remove a guest, I need to know what row to remove. So if I click on this specific guest and I want to remove that, I just click remove and it's going to automatically remove her. So now we know what row to remove, and notice it's 0. So removing it's going to help, letting us know the row is going to let us know what row we need to remove it, and it's going to delete that automatically from there. Okay, great. So I'm glad I got to show that part of you. Let's go, now that we've understand the formulas and what the backend is, we're going to go into the VBA and show you just how we did. So into the developers and click on Visual Basic. If you don't have the developers open, click on the options here and then go into the customizer and make sure you select developers there. Once you have that, the developers, you can also use Alt F11 to get you there. Go into Visual Basic. Let's go over just a little bit of the on-cheat code. That's it for the on-cheat code, just the selection change. Just 2 different events that are going to happen on selection change. One, if we make a selection between GH, we want to load the event. And another one, if we want to load in the selected guest. So just 2. So what are those 2? Let's go into those. I want to load the event if I make a selection on G or H, and I want to make sure that G contains a value. If there's no value, nothing can happen, right? But then I want to run the macro that's going to actually load that event. That's one. And as we mentioned earlier on this one, if we want to also load, the other one is if I want to load the specific guest. So when I select this, I want to put the guest name in here into J, and I want to put the seat number located right here into B15. So that's it. So just those two events is all we really need to focus on. So G, let's drop this down here. So if G5 through H is nothing and the target row is not empty, meaning it does contain a value, then what I want to do is I want to take B12 and put the target row. B12 is going to let us know exactly what seat event row up to G5 and H5. So that's going to let us know what selected event row. So that conditional format is going to change that. And also again, so then we're just going to run the macro to load the event. We're going to go into that macro shortly. Also, if the user makes a change between I17 and J99 here when we select the table here, then I want that to load, assuming that I contains a value, then we can load that information, the guest information. So I7 through J99 nothing, and I in the target row do not equal empty, then again B14 is going to take on a row. That's going to use our conditional formatting. B14 is we're going to let know the row. Then we're going to run the macro to table load selected guest. That's going to load the guest. All that macro is going to pretty much do is put the guest name here, and it's going to put the seat number here. So let's take a look inside. So that's it for the on-sheet code. Let's take a look at some of the macros that allow us to hide these and show these. And that's going to be located in a module called here panel macros. So let's take a look at some of these panel macros. They're relatively simple. I'll go quickly over them just so we understand what's going on. So the first one is hide add table panel and the show add table panel. These are pretty much opposite, so I only need to show you just one. Add table panel show. That's the add table here. So if we want to show you, click on the add table, this is the add table here. And so both the hide add table panel and the show add table panel are pretty much the same. So I'm just going to show you one. So let's take a look at that. All we need to do is click customize design. That is the macro that's shown. So basically what I want to do is I want to unhide C through F. And I also want to unhide this group here. I want to make sure that this group, the table group, is unhidden. And I also want to make sure to unhide this button, the add table group. When I click on this is a specific text. This is just a text link. When I click on this, and if we take a look at the macro that's been assigned, clicking assign macro, we see that it's the hide add table panel. And this one, of course, is the show hide. Notice the show one's not showing because we don't want to show it. When we click the hide, it's going to show this customized design. This, of course, the macro that's been assigned to this is the opposite. It's the show add table. So when I click this, again, I want those particular shapes to show up, and I want the columns to show. When I click this, I want it to hide and show that. So that's just what we've done here. In the add table panel here, the sample table groups, of course, we're going to hide that because we're hiding the add table panel. We're going to also hide the add table button. We are going to also hide the custom table button. I want to hide that button. I want to show the custom table button. What is that? I want to show it. If we take a look at here, we see the name. This is called custom table button. So I want to show that particular shape because I want to show that. So it gives the user the opportunity to display that. And then also, again, I want to make sure C through F is hidden, right? When we're hiding it, we don't want to show it. B7 equals false. We're going to set the customize to false. Everything on the show is going to be completely the opposite. True, true, true. We're showing these shapes and we're hiding it. And then, of course, we are going to show the columns by column hidden equals false. So that's it for that. Showing the events panel is going to be pretty much the same. We're just showing specific or hiding specific buttons and hiding or showing columns. Nothing difficult about that, just showing, hiding. Please download the workbook, take a look. All we're doing is hiding and showing columns. So there's not a whole lot, nothing too special in those. So let's move out of that and let's take a look at some of the event macros. The event macros are really cool here. So the first thing I want to do is one macro called save and update event. That's the macro that's going to allow us to either save or update it. When I click this button here, it's going to do two things, save it or update it. If we add a new event and then I click save, of course, we're saving a brand new event and there's some required fields, event date, event name. So we want to do that. So it's either going to be for new events or for existing. And we want to show events. All we do is need to show the events and then select on a specific event. And it's going to show those events and show those tables. It's going to load it and load all that information. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure as we go through the macros, I've already dimensioned a bunch of variables, so I'll go through that. We got to make sure that we've covered the required fields. We need to make sure there's an event date and make sure there's an event name. So if L3 is empty or N3 is empty, then just let the user know that event names and dates are required to show the events. Okay, now I want to check for duplicate event names. I don't want a duplicate event name. I want to keep these very unique. So what I need to do is go into the event list here and check all the events and see if it exists. If it exists, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a duplicate, because if I update it, for example, if I'm updating it, it's already exists, but it is on the current one, right? If I click save, I know Debbie's wedding exists because I'm saving it. So we want to make sure if it's an existing event, we know that it's an existing. We just need to check to make sure that this selected event row 7 is going to be equal for Debbie's wedding. So we check on that. We look at Debbie's wedding. We want to make sure it's row 7. If it is, fine. But if it's all found on another row, like row 5, then we know it's a duplicate. So we're going to check that. But if it's a new event, we can look through it and make sure it doesn't exist. Okay, so let's take a look at that inside the code and see just how we went about doing that. So first of all, on error, if there's no data, it could create an error. So we just say on error, go to no data. I'm going to set the event name to whatever's in N3. Then what I want to do is I want to set in a range. I've already dimensioned the event name as a range. So we can set that range based on sheet 3, which is our list of event names, based on the name range that we created called event names. We're going to find, we're looking for something. I'm looking for the event name. If it's found and it's new, now I need to differentiate. If it's found and it's new. So we're going to check for duplicate name in new events. This is for new events, right? If this event has never been created, B4 would be empty, right? B4 it's empty because there's no row that's been assigned to it because it hasn't been created. So if it's a new event and it is found, then we know that the name exists already, but it's a brand new event. So we know to let the user know the event name already exists, please use a new name. Next up, but what if it's an existing event? If it's an existing event, meaning B4 does not equal empty, and the event.name is nothing, then we know it exists, but we don't necessarily know if it's a duplicate just yet. But if the event name row, if the row that's found where the event, that's the row that it's found, right? We know that Debbie, we're going to find it, right? We're looking for it in here. We know it's on row 7, but what if it's found on row 5 or 6? Then it's a problem. But if it's row 7, it's not a problem. So I need to check row 7. If it's found on row 7, and I look inside the seating chart, let's move this over here, we don't need this, check to see if it's B7. If it's found on row 7 and it's here B7, then we're okay. But if it's different, then we know it's a duplicate. So we do just that inside the code. If the event name row does not equal B4, that means the event exists on a different row, then it's a duplicate. We need to let the user know already exists again. So now we've checked for duplicate events. So now we know the name is unique and we can move on. So next up, if B4 equals empty, then it's a new event. We need to differentiate between a new event and an existing event. So if it's a new event, I need to first determine an event row based on sheet 3, which is our event list, and determine the first event available row. Then once I have that, I'm going to take B3. B3 is going to be our selected event, and I want to take whatever is our next event ID from B5 using our max formula. I'm going to place this number directly in our event because that's going to be our next ID. I also want to place it inside here, inside column A here. I want to put that next event right here in column A. That's only, of course, for new events. So we do just that inside the code here. B3 is equal to whatever's in B5, and sheet 3, A in the event row dot value equals B5. So it's going to take our event ID and put it in. Now that's only for new. For existing, if they've already been saved, we're just going to take whatever is in B4 and assign that to the variable E5. Everything else, all we're going to do, which is going to place the event name in column B from N3. We're going to place the event date in column C, and we're going to place the notes from R3. So that's just, we're going to place it in here. Now we know the event row. Next up, what I want to do is I want to refresh the events list. I want to take all these names. I want to get just basically unique, no criteria. So I want to take all of these events and place them here. And then what I want to do is I want to sort them based on the date, so the newest to the top. And I want to place these, and I want to place those events right in here in this list. So the first thing we want to do is clear out this list and place it. That way, if we make a change to an event, a name, like let's just say we spelled it wrong, Debbie wedding, right? We can then update that, and then it's going to update our list. So we save that event, and now it's going to say Debbie's wedding here. So we want to make sure that we update that list, not only update it in the database here under Debbie wedding, but make sure that we update the list accordingly right here. So we want to make sure. So let's go ahead and see how we do that. So first thing, again, we want to do is clear all the current events on sheet 1, which is here. Just clear all the current events. Then determine the last event row, sheet 3, based on, I need to know the last row. We're going to run an advanced filter without criteria, we're going to get all the event names and dates here. So first we need to determine the last row. In this case, it's 7. Once we have that, we can then move on. So sheet 3, A and D in the event row, running an advanced filter, copying that, no criteria, right? No criteria. I just want a unique list of events. G2 through H2 is where we're going to come. Once I have that here in this list, I can then sort it. We're going to determine the last row. In this case, the last row of our results is 7 based on column G. And of course, if the last row is less than 3, there's nothing we can do. We're going to exit the sub. Okay, there's no events, so we can continue on. And then, assuming that there are events, obviously there's going to be events, but if there's no events, nothing to do. We're going to sort it. So based on with sheet 3 sort, I want to clear any current sorts. And then what I want to do is I want to base it on H3. So H3 is going to be our first, and I want descending. I want the highest date, the most recent date first. Going down, we're going to set the range to G3H in the last result row, and then apply those sorts. So that'll apply the sort, it'll bring it all the way down to the date. So now once we have that, once I have all the information, all I just need to do is take the information, in this case G5 all the way through H in the last row, plus in this case probably 2, and bring it over from whatever the results are here. So that's what we did in the code. So G5 and H in the last result row plus 2. Why are we adding 2? Because our destination starts in row 5, but our results stored in row 3. So we need to add 2 to compensate for the row difference. So that's what we're doing. It's going to take it and bring all the information from there. Next up, we're going to set the event name. Now that I've brought them all over, I want to select the event that we're on. I want to select it, right? Because now we don't know which one they've been resorted. So what I want to do is I want to find Bailey's birthday party in this list. And if it's in this case row 5, I want to select row 5. So what we want to do is we're going to set it. So we're going to set the event name range based on G5 through G99, and we're looking for the event name. We've already defined the event name all the way up here based on N3, so we don't need to define it again. So once we have that, we're going to look for that. If it's found, not event name is nothing, right? We're going to look for find, nothing, cancel each other out so we know it's been found. Then what I want to do is G and the event name row select. Once we select it, the macro is going to automatically run to load the event. So it's going to reload that event automatically. And then what I want to do is I want to clear contents B4. And when we do that, I want to make sure B14 and B15, those are based on the selected table, right? Those are based on table. Once we reselect the event, we want to clear any tables out. So if I clear this, I want to make sure that everything is cleared out here. So we've got that. We understand now how to, that is exactly how we save or update an event. Okay, let's move on to the event load. The event load, when I select something, I want that event to load, right? I want the tables colored accordingly. I want the event date and the event information loading up properly. So I want all the table information cleared out until we actually select a specific table. And I like this. We can also hide the table details, but when we select the table, it's going to open up, which is kind of a nice way to do it. So let's get into the code. So basically what I want to do is I want to determine the last table list row, because I want to know all the tables associated with this specific event. So we have our events tables list here. I want to determine the last row. Then what I want to do is I want to get a criteria. I want to know only those tables that have been set for this specific event. All right, so once we select a specific event, we need a macro that's going to load that information. So this macro here called event load. So the first thing what we want to do is I want to know the specific tables that are set for that event. All right, so this macro, event load, let's get started with this macro here. So the first thing we want to do is we want to bring all the table colors back to this blue. So if I stop that code right here, let's stop it down here. Okay, so if I stop it and I load an event, we're going to see that all of these tables here are now blue. So the first thing I want to do is put them all back to blue, and only those that are occupied I want to put into the darker blue with the white font. So that's just what we did. We'll continue with the code here. So for events that have blue, we want to first reset them all to blue. So we do that with this. So the first thing is I want to determine all the tables. So sheet 2, if we look at sheet 2, admin and lists here, this is sheet 2. I want to look based on all of these tables. So the last row in this case is 19. So I want to loop through all the table numbers here and then determine then based on those, so we know that our tables here are actually table 1, table 2, so we can loop through those and determine all the tables based on the name that we've assigned. So how do we do that? Okay, so we do that relatively easy. So once we determine the last, assuming that the last table list row is not 5, right, or less than 5, then we can move on. We're going to run a loop for 5 to the last row. So we're going to loop through all these, starting with 5, going to the last one, getting this number located in C, and then adding the word table onto that so we can get the entire shape name. Once we have that, we can color it accordingly. So we do that just like this. So the table row equals 5 to the last one. Table number is equal to sheet 2, C in the table row. It's going to loop through each one of those, determine the table. Now what we can use is we have that table number, we can set the name because the shapes, the word table plus the table number combined is going to equal our shape name. We're going to set the fill color to RGB 200, 220, 230, 242. How do we get this number? Well, let's just say we have a set up a shape. Let's just add a shape so I can experiment with another shape. So we've got a shape, and let's say I want to give it that dark color. Let's say I want to do a shape fill of this one, but I want to know the RGB of this. So if we go into the format, right, shape fill, and then we go into the more fill colors, we can see right here into the custom, this is our RGB 23, 55, 94. So we can just pull that and put it right inside our code. So that's all if we want that color. So that's just what I did here. So then we get their numbers here, but in this case we're going to light blue, obviously. So the light blue is going to be a different RGB. The light blue is what I want to set everything to is 220, 230, 242. So if we click here, click any one particular shape, and then go into the shape fill, more fill colors, right? We can see the RGB 220, 230, 242. So that's just the way that I got it there. So now that we've set the fill, now what I want to do is I want to set the font to that blue font. So I want to set it to a blue font. To do that, we're going to say, based on that shape name, the text frame, the text range, font, the fill for color. I know it's a lot of variables there, a lot of information. RGB, I want the RGB, that's the easiest one, 55, 96, 146. And then we're just going to loop through every single one of the tables based on that. We can keep the fixtures. The fixtures are okay to stay the way they are. So we just need to loop through the tables, and that's it. So once we've done, if for some reason B12 equals exit, now we're ready to move on. B12, what's B12? B12 is the selected event row. We need to know what event row, because we're selecting a specific event. I need to get information from that event. So that's going to be, we need to know that without a specific selected, we can exit the sub. There's no event selected. Okay, assuming that we do have that, we can move on. So we can, selected row is going to be into a variable, selected row equals B12. Once I have that, I can determine the event name is based on G in the selected row. Now what we want to do is I want to find the event name based on the events, event names. If we look into the formulas, the name manager, and we go down events, event names, tab over, we see this. I want to look for that event name. That's why it's unique, because we only want one name, and I want to determine the row that it's on. That's going to get us all the row of the events. So based on the name that they've user select, so we can do that with this. So the event name is going to be the event. If we're looking for find, we're finding the event name. Once it's found, assuming that it is found, if not nothing, that means it is found. Then what I want to do is I want to clear all the contents, clear everything out based on the current event. So that's going to be all this information at the top, because we're loading in all the table information and basically everything else that's in for that. So I want to clear all of the information for the current events. Then what I want to do is I want to set the event row. The event row is going to be based on the event name, that found range here, based on the row that it's founded. Then what we can do is we can load everything information, B3, N3, L3, and R3. We're going to set the event ID, the event name, and the event date, and the notes. So basically what we're going to do is you're going to take the events list, ID, name, date, and notes, and bring all that information into our, the notes, the name, and the date, and the event ID is going to go into B3. The event ID is going to be placed right here. So we're just bringing all that information over. Once we have all that over, we want to get the list of book tables. Now is when I want to color the tables based on that. So notice they all went to light blue, but now I need to color some of them dark blue. So how do I know that tables 1, 2, 3, and 12 are all booked out? Well, as soon as we update a table and save a table, it gets in our event tables list. So now what I do is I want to just simply determine all of the criteria for event. I want to know all the tables that were booked out for event ID 1. Notice right here, event ID 1. We've just loaded event ID 1. So now what I want to do is I want to look in our table list, and I want to determine using criteria, this is simply equal to whatever's in B3. So I want to look in this list. I want to determine, extract only those tables for event 1, which would be these 3 and this, and that's going to determine, and I'm going to put those in a unique list right here. Now I can loop through these, table 1, table 2, table 3, and color them accordingly because I have that unique list. So that's just what we're going to do inside the code. So the first thing we need to do is determine the last table row based on sheet 4. Sheet 4 is our advanced table list. That's going to get the last row. In this case, of course, the last row is 10, but we can move on. If it's less than 3, there's no tables. We can exit out and go right here, assuming that there are tables. we can then run our advanced filter. A2 through B, we just need the first. All we're focused on is really event ID and tables. That's all we need. We're going to use the criteria, whatever's in H2. I just went over that criteria right here. We're going to have those results. All I want in the results is the tables. So tables, and it's going to unique equal true. That's going to give us a list of tables that have already been booked for that specific event. Once we have that, we determine the last row of that based on column J. The last row is in 6 here. So we can get the last row if it's less than 3, go to node tables. We get it using end XL up based on column J. Okay, so for result row equals 3 to last result row. Now we can loop through those and pretty much color both the font. First thing I want to do is determine the table number. That's going to be in J, so the table number 1, 2, 3, or 12. So we put that into a variable, and now we combine the word table with the table number. And again, this time we're just copying everything in that group, putting the fill color for everything in that group based on 23, 55, 94. And now again, shapes, table, and table number. Again, we're putting the white font, 255, T55. That's our white font. So that's all we have to do. That's it. So as soon as I load this table, as soon as I click it, it's going to load that table right here. As soon as I click on that, it's going to run the macro, load the table, coloring just those tables, giving it that dark blue and white font. So that's how we load the table. So what's next? Next up, what I want to do is I want to event save and update the table. In this case, event save update the table. And this is the macro that's actually run when we click this button. So if I select a seating time, let's say 8 o'clock p.m. and then we want to have a table, Fredstein, and test notes, and we want to save it. That's the macro, and I want to take that. I want to update that table, and the details have been saved. So that's it. So how do we do that? And that's table 12. But if we have one that's not been saved before, we can also test. We can just put in test notes. Nothing else is required. Just click save. We also may want to update this table too. So first we need to determine if this exists or not. I need to know if this table has been saved in this row. In this case, we just said event ID table number 7. So we just put this one in. I need to determine if this row exists or not. So how do we know if it exists? Well, based on B6 value, let's take a look back in our seating chart here, and let's take a look at B6. B6, of course, is our sum product. Remember, we went over that. We're looking inside this events table list, and I need to know anywhere that event ID 1 and 7. If it doesn't exist, then this would be 0 or blank. So if it does exist, when I click on 6, notice 6 hasn't been saved in that list. There's no instance in this table list of 1 and 6 together, so it's going to return 0, our sum product. We know it's a brand new one. If it does exist, it's going to return the actual row of that. 1 and 7 is the one we just created, saved on row 11. So that way we know to make an update. So if I decide I want to add in a seating time, or let's say I want to guest and I want to put in the name, then I know exactly what row to save that. So when we update those, it's going to know to put that exactly in the right row, so we can update the right row or add a new row. So we're going to use exactly whatever is located in B6 to determine that, and that's just what we do inside the code. If B6 equals 0 or B6 value equals empty, then we know it's a new event table item. We should put item because it's a new item in that list. So then we can say the event table row is going to be the first available one based on B4. Then we can put in the event ID and the table number. That's only for brand new table items because that table has never been created. Otherwise, we know it's existing, else existing. Then we can do whatever's in B6 is the table row. So the other 3 items are regardless of whether it is a new or an existing. We can then put in the seating time in column C. We can put in the name in column D, and we can put in E the note. So that's just what we did here. So we'll put all those items in here. Just take them from here, here, and here, and we place them right here in the seating time here. So that's it. That's all we need to do. Once we do that, we can then refresh the event. I want to refresh the event. So that's really important because I want to load the event so that's going to refresh everything automatically because I want to make sure that we refresh the seating chart, right? Once we add it, I want to make sure that we update that. Everything gets updated. So message, then I want just a message box saying applicant details true. This helps things refresh quicker. And then a message box, table details saved. That's it. So what about new event? Very simple macro. When I click add event or new event, I want to clear some information out. And I also want to make sure that the tables are all cleared out, right? We need to make sure that the colors are all cleared out, going back to the original color. color because they're no longer booked in new event. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we want to do is I want the last table list row. Just like we did the first time, determining in our admin, I want to know the last row. I want to know which tables we need to color that light blue. Determine the last row and loop through it just as we did before. So that's exactly, if it's less than 5 exit, we're going to do exactly the same thing we did above. Run that loop, coloring the background that light blue, coloring the font that dark blue, and then all we're going to do is clear associated fields. So that's all we have to do for event new. That's it. That's all we have to do for the event new. Now that we've covered the panel macro, now we're just going to focus on the few macros for the table. That's how we create. So let's go over that now. So the first one I want to show you is actually the ability to add a table. If we remember correctly and we click customize design, we have the ability to add a table. So I want to first run a macro called select table to add. This is a specific macro, whether we're adding a fixture or a table. There's a macro that runs in this. In fact, it's the same macro regardless of what we click. So if we zoom in here a little bit, we can see that everything has been given a specific name. Every shape in this is called rectangle. Look at that, rectangle. Even the bigger ones called rectangle. So all those little shapes, this is just basically squares with a plus. Every shape in here has been called circle. Every shape in here has been called square. Even the outside little chair, square. So that way, no matter what the user clicks on, we know what information using something called application caller. It's going to tell us whatever the shape name is called, I want to put that right here. In this case, it's going to be sample add fixture. So that's the one we want. So let's take a look at that. Of course, I've grouped them all together. So basically what I want to do is when I click here, I want to do a few things. I want to paste it here, and I also want to update, and I want to put in the next table. So that's what we're going to do inside this macro called table select to add. If we right click any of the individual shapes here, right click, assign the macro, we see that it's called table select add. That's the macro that we're focusing on, okay? So with table select add, the first thing we're gonna do is determine the table row as long and the fixture row as long. I wanna know that. I don't think we're gonna be using fixture row though, because I didn't decide to add, wasn't too important. First of all, set the add mode to true. I wanna know that we're adding it. And then I want a shapes add table button equals MSO true. So I wanna display this add table automatically. Usually we're gonna hide it, but I wanna add it. I only wanna add that. So I want to display that button there. So we do that with this line of code. Then what I want to do is I want to delete the validation. Whatever validation is in here, I want to delete it because I'm going to be putting in a brand new one because I want only the numbers that are associated with the specific table. So if I select rectangle, I want only 16, 12, 8, and 6. If I select circle, I want 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, and so on and so on. And for square, of course, I want 12, 8, 4, and 2. So I want that based on. So the first thing we want to do before we can add any validation is to make sure we delete the validation. So we do that here. So next up, once it's deleted, then we're going to determine the application caller. That is the name of the shape that called it. If it's sample add fixture, in other words, if we've clicked on this one, then we need to do a few things. What do I want to do with that? If that, I want to select E7. That's going to select everything out. That's going to let the user know to select that. Should probably color this white too in this instance because we want to add them the fixture name. So once we've added that, then I want to set D7 to fixture name. I want to change the text in this to fixture name because I want to put in the fixture name. And then what I want to do is I want to clear any contents from E7. That's going to let them know, clear anything else, and let them put in the fixture name. So we can then click add fixture. Now remember, as you notice this was based on the formula, so it's based on this one. So if this says fixture, it's going to say fixture name. If this says table, table type. But what about if it's not fixture? In that case, they've actually wanted a shape. So in that case, it is a table type selection. So in that case, we want to add table. So this first time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select E8. That's going to select off any other shape that might be selected. D7 is going to become table type. Pull it down here. Table type, D7. So now that we have that, that's going to help the button text. So once we have that, and then we can move on to our validation. So we want to add a validation based on the table type. So we're adding it equals table types. And that's going to go in C7. That way they can change the different table types automatically. But I may not want to do that. That's not necessary because clicking on here will do the same thing. So I'm considering that, but that's going to change the table type. So we can have table types here so a user can select a different, but I think we might remove that because we then have to update this as well based on change, which is not easy, just a little bit more code to writing. Okay, so first of all, determine the application caller. Remember, that's the name of the shape, circle, rectangle or square. Take that, whatever the name of that, and put it right in E7. So that's just what we did here. E7 equals the application color. Shape name, that's the name of the shape. So now that we have the shape name and we can clear the number of seats, I want to clear the number of seats here. So in E8 we want to clear anything else that's here, so put the number of seats there and then allow the user, of course. Then what I want to do is just to make sure E8 validation delete, I want to delete any validation that might be there just in case. Now again we're going to add the validation. This time the validation is going to equal the application color. Why can we do that? Because I already have 3 different lists, one named rectangle, one named square, and one named circle. So we know that. That way we can add the validation. That's going to add that validation located here. It's going to add that rectangle equals and the rectangle based on whatever it is. So we just have to say equals and whatever the application color is. Now we have that. So now E9 also equals, I want to set the default table number. Set the default table number. E9 equals B9. Table number. How do we know which is the next table number? We can zoom out a little bit now. So B9, if we see here, is the next table number based on the max. I want to take the next table number and place it here. That way we can quickly create brand new tables. We don't have the user set. So that's it. That's all we need to do. So the next step, we actually want to add the table or fixture. So I want to click here. The next macro is when we set the number of seats, let's say 12, and click add table, and that's going to add the brand new table. So this macro is going to do just that. So we just added 16 here. We don't need to keep it. I can delete it here and of course delete it from here, but probably should be done in the same macro. Okay, so what do we do with that one? So in this case, I want to make sure that we actually have the number of seats. I want to make sure that's filled in and click add the table. So let's go over that macro now. It's called add table fixture. That's the macro that's been assigned to this button, add table. First thing what I want to do is I want to determine the sample name as a string, the table name as a string, and the shape text as a string. We need all that. And also the table list range as a range. That's this table list right here. I need to know the list of tables here. So once we have that, we can then determine the table row is long and the table shape is long. First thing, I want to check for empty fields. D7 of course cannot be empty. Just if D7 is empty, make sure they select table type. If E7 or E8 equals empty or equals 90, then please make sure to include table type, number of seats, and table. These are all required fields, so we need to make sure. Exit the sub in case those we can't add a table. What if it's a fixture type? So if D7, I should say, is a table type, only if it's a table type, then we need to make sure that these are not. But if it's a fixture type, then we only need to make sure that E7, so based on the type, we only need to make sure that E7 is not blank if we're adding a fixture. If it's a table, we need 3. So that's just what so if D7 equals table type, we're going to check here. Else, if it's fixture type, we need to make sure that E7 is not blank. If it is blank, we're just going to have a message box. Please enter a unique fixture name before adding. Now, assuming that we have all the required fields, we can then move on. We're going to check for duplicate table numbers. I need to make sure that we don't duplicate the table numbers. So the best thing to do is to determine based on the range here and see if there's a match. If there's a match, then we know that there's a duplicate table number. So first thing we're going to do is set the table list range equal to sheet 2 the table numbers. We're going to look for whatever's in E9. That's the table number that's located here. If it exists already, then we need to let the user know that it already exists. So if not table list is nothing, that means the table exists because we're looking for it. If it's found, we're going to let the user know table number and then put the table number already exists. Please choose another number and then exit out of the sub. We want to make sure there's not duplicate table number. All right, next up, everything is cool. So we're ready to move on. We've ran all of our checks. If D7 is a table type, do this. If it's a fixture type, do this. So what are we doing if it's a table type? First, the sample name is going to be E7 and E8. What do I mean by that? The sample name. Remember here we've created some samples, right? So what is the sample name here? It's rectangle 16, circle 12. So how do we do that? Well, all I need to do is combine whatever is here and whatever is here. So if we selected it, we got the seat number, we know the sample name, circle 10, right? Because it's the same note. So all we need to combine whatever is in E7 and E8 to determine our sample name. So a lot of it goes into their samples. So our circle is circle 10. So that's how we determine the sample name. I need to know the sample name because I need to duplicate this and then I need to rename it based on the table. So basically that's what we're going to do in the code. The first thing we need to do is determine the proper name of our proper sample. So that's what we do inside the code. So our sample name is going to be E7 combined with E8. That's the table type and number of seats. Our table name is going to be table plus E9. Remember, that's the table name equal to the word table and of course the table number. So that's the combine. That's going to get us our table name because I want to convert it to this table 1, table 2. So we know it. We know the table number is located here in B9. So we determine that and put that into a string variable. Now that we have that, I also want the shape text. What is the text? That is this table number here. I want that 1, 2, because I want that table number displayed right in the middle of our tables. So that's called the shape text. That's going to be the table number located in whatever's E9. Now I've got it. What about the first available table row? I need to add that table here, and the first available row is going to be 20, so it's going to be the last of 16 plus 1. So that's where we're going to put the table there. So we do that. The sheet table row is going to be sheet 2, the last row with a value plus 1. Next up, we're ready to add in all the information. Sheet C is going to take on the table number, D is going to take on the table type, and E is going to take on the number of seats. So that's what we just bring all the values over from sheet 1 to sheet 2. Else, what if it's a fixture? If it's a fixture, I've given that fixture sample and name here. That's the way. Else, if it's a fixture here, it's called fixture sample. Then we know the name. We can duplicate that and change the text accordingly. So that's what we're going to do here. In this case, the sample name is going to be the fixture. The table name is going to be the fixture and whatever's in E7. So it's going to be called, we'll give it the name fixture and whatever's in here. So for example, this one says fixture kitchen, this one says fixture drink station. So it's whatever the user put in here, fixture name here. So whatever they put in here. So what if I add in something called let's say entrance, put it in capitals, and I click add fixture. So we do need to update the name. I'll make this. It should be called entrance. We can rename it, but I'm going to do that through VB. I'll show you how we do it. It should be called entrance. So we're going to do that here. So we have that. Now that's how we do it. We add it. Just need to update the text. So that's what we're going to do the rest in the code. So we need to do the shape text in this case, right? Shape text here. I need to add that E7 value. Okay, it's right here. We need to put that in. So now that we have the fixture text, we'll make sure to put that in. E7, the fixture name is fixture. We can move on. Sample name, duplicate. We're ready to duplicate it now. All we need to do is duplicate and then assign that duplicate the table name. So basically all we're going to be doing, let's slide this over. I'll show you what we're going to be doing inside it. Basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to duplicate it like that. Then I'm going to take this new one and I'm going to take this name and give it the new name. That's all we're actually doing there. All right, so we've got that covered. Let's continue on. Okay, so moving on in the code. Now with the shapes table, now we're focused. If D7 equals table type, then this is where I need to add in the fixture name. Then what we're going to do is give it a shape name. This is where that fixture shape name comes in. Else, and if, so this case, we want to give it that name. So here, so with the table name, dot text, text frame 2, text range, and then text is going to be equal to shape text. So basically what I want to do is if it's a table type, why are we doing that? Why do we have to separate those? Let's take a look right here inside the sample. I can't assign a name to this entire group. I only want to assign a name to this part. It's called inner rectangle 12. This is where I want to assign the text. However, if it is a normal fixture, all I need to do is differently. I just need to assign the text to that specific shape. That's really all I need to do. So we need to treat them a little bit differently because they're grouped. So that's what we do in here. So if it's a grouped item, group items, I need to assign a text to something called inner based on E7 and E8. Inner rectangle 4, whatever it is, text frame 2, that's a check. Otherwise, fixture, table type. Okay, so now when we add a new one, it'll automatically do. So let's take a look at what we just made that update. So now we're going to add a fixture, and now what we can call it entrance. And now we click add the fixture, and it's going to automatically, now the text is updated accordingly. So now we can, if we wanted to turn it, we could turn it up, and we can add an entrance onto that. So we maybe want to put the entrance here. So that might be kind of nice. So something like that. So you could put an entrance. So now we've got the text associated. We just needed to add that in. All right, moving on. Let's move on. We got a lot to cover here. So once we've added those, now what we want to do is simply just take that shape based on this shape's table name, the one we just created. We've duplicated, we've assigned a name, we've added text to where we want to. Now I want to place it. I want to place it based on K4, this cell here, but I want to move it a little bit to the right and a little bit down. So we can do that. Sheet 1, remember we need to specify the sheet here because we're based inside the width shape. So we need to specify sheet 1 here. K4 and move it over a little bit on the left and then based on the top and then move it a little bit down. Now what we want to do is we want to send a macro to it. I've got a macro that is created, and if we take a look at this and we click inside there and we click assign macro, we're actually assigning a macro. It's called table select to edit. And that's a cool macro. It's going to let us select it. So on that particular macro, we need to assign a macro to that. We just created a brand new shape. I want to assign a macro to that. So how do we do that? Simple. On action equals table select edit. That's just going to assign that same macro. So every single table gets a macro that's added to it. Now, the good thing is when we get to that, we can specify specific information about that table so we know the information. So moving on. So if sheet 1 equals table tab, again, rename all shapes in a group. I want to rename every shape in a group. Why do I want to do that? Because when I select a specific shape, I want to make sure that it's all called table 1, everything. So regardless of what the user selects, regardless, whatever shape they select inside, whether it's the big square or the big circle, I want every single shape to have the same name in that. So if we look here, we see table 15, everything has the same name. That's very important because I want to make sure that regardless of select, we're going to use that name. That name is very important because out of that name, we can extract the table number. I want to put the table number here. So it's very important that we extract that. Removing the word table, we can do that. And I'm going to show you that macro in just a moment. So the important thing to know is that every single shape within that group gets the same name. So we do that with this macro here. For each table shape in group items, for every single table shape dot name equals name. So now we're focused on for every single in dot group items. Remember, this is based on this shape. So all the items within the group are going to take on the same name. So that's all we need to do. And then last thing, I want to make sure it's visible. So we're just going to make sure the shape is visible, and then I'm going to select it. I like to select it. So when I select it, the user can then move over. So the selection is actually done through VBA. So all we need to do is just use dot select, and it's going to select it based on this shape. That's it. E7 through E9. I want to clear the information based on any information based on the table. So once we select it, so that way they can add a new node. So clearing everything else out here, E7 through E9, just to clear that out, and that's going to clear everything out once we load that. Okay, so that's it. That's it. After we add that table, that's it. That's all we have to do to add a table. So I want to hide that button and make it fill. So clicking on add table, let's put in a number of seats using the selection. So clicking on add table is going to click it. It's going to clear everything else out, hide that button, and it's going to create a brand new table which we can move and drag anywhere we want. Okay, great. So I'm glad I got to show that to you, that macro. Just a few more to go but there's some really, really cool features you definitely want to stick around for. So remember I showed you there's a macro called click to edit. That's the macro that's been assigned, that we just assigned to it. And that's the macro that's going to show the information. So let's say if I have already information, I want to load the information. I want to put in the table number, the number of seats. I want to put all that information here. The number of seats we can do through actually a formula based on this. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Select to edit. The first thing we want to do is dimension table name is string, and the event table row is long, and the last table row is long. So the table name is going to be the application caller. Remember, we need to figure out, I want to know the name. Remember, in this case, table 2, that means every shape in that group has the same name. So we're going to dimension, so regardless of the shape that called that macro, they're all going to be named table 2. So every shape inside that group is named table 2. So the table name is going to be the application caller. That is the name of the shape that called the macro. Name of the shape that called the macro. All right, so now what we want to do is I want to clear all the table fields, J6, J7. I want to clear all the fields out here because it's whatever the previous table is showing. We want to clear all that out. Next thing I want to do, I want to select it. I want to make sure to select that shape. And J4 is going to be equal to basically, again, using the replace, we're going to remove the word table. We've already extracted this table 1, table 2, whatever it is. So now I want to remove the word table. So whatever is remaining is the table number. And I'm going to place that table number in J4. And then we're going to calculate, and that's what it's going to do, is going to determine the number of seats. Because we're going to index the admin list. I'm going to index E5 through E9, and we're going to use a match. So I want to determine the number of seats based on match the seating chart J4 based on table 2. So again, E5, the admin and list, let's take a look at that. Table number 2 has 12 seats. So I'm going to determine where table number 2 is, what row, and return the number of seats because I want to know the number of seats based on that. So we're going to use index to do that. Next up, remove the table name and calculate. Okay, so now that we have that, now I want to load the table details. Remember, has the table been saved before? If it has been saved, we've got a row here in B6. If B6 is 0 or empty, we know it hasn't been. In this case, it has. So if B6 it doesn't equal 0 and doesn't equal empty, then we know we can load the information. And that's just what we did right here. If B6 does not equal empty and B6 does not equal 0, then what I want to do is the event table row is going to be B6. Then I'm going to load in the seating time, put it in J6, load in the reservation name, also from D4 and load it in the table notes. So it's going to load in all the information located here, here, and here, and it's going to be based on here, coming from here, here, and here, just as we did before. It's going to load all the information in there. Okay, so that's it. Next up, all we're going to be doing is table loading the guests. We're going to run the macro to load guests. I'll go over that. And then the show table panel, right? If that panel is hidden, right, and I select the table, I want to make sure to show that panel. So that macro is going to show that table. It's kind of nice so we can see all the table details. All right, next up, I want to load the table guests. That's the macro that's going to run here. What about the guests? I want to load all the guests that are located here. So I believe in this one here, we've got a few guests here. So for example, here or here, we've got a few guests. So how do we load those guests? Well, again, all we have to do in this case is determine the event ID and the table number 1. So we're going to run an advanced filter based on whatever's in B3, based on whatever's in J4. So I'm going to run an advanced filter. I want to know all the guests where the event ID is 1 and where the table number is 1. In this case, it's only 2. Then I'm going to bring that information over to right here and bring it inside the guest list. So that's just what I did right here. So the last guest row is going to be equal to sheet 5. Now we're focused on sheet 5. Sheet 5 is the guest list. So I want to determine the last row here. Once we have the last row, in this case it's 6, I'm going to run an advanced filter using this is the criteria and this is the results. And that's just what we do right here. So if the last guest row is less than 3, then go to no guest. A2 through D, we're going to run that advanced filter. I2 through J2 is the criteria. L2 through M2 is the results. Assuming that the results, we have the results and it's less than 3, then we can bring them over. Bringing those over in this line, we're going to add 14 because our guest list starts here on row 17, while our guest list row here starts on 3. So we need to add 14 to compensate for the difference there. And that's going to bring in all the guests right here. That's it. That's all we had to do. But what about add a guest? We got a few more macros to go. What about adding a guest? Now I want to add a guest. So let's take a look in here. Let's clear this out. Let's say I want to add a guest to this table. Let's say I want to go Tom and I want to click add a guest. I want to add a guest to that. So how do we do that? Clicking this add guest is going to do just that. So table add a guest, we're going to determine the guest table row is long. And with sheet J13 is missing, then we have a missing guest name. Please enter a guest add, right? We can't enter a guest unless they've actually entered something in J13. So, all right, assuming B13, if B13 is greater than J5, then this table is already full. How could that happen? If we remember, we have the total number of guests here. B13 is the total number of guests. So the more tables that we have guests, the more we have. In this case, it's 2. So we're going to use count A. So I want to make sure that seats number 12, if we're currently at 2, it's fine. We can add more, but if it exceeds it, not. So we can do that in this line of code. If B13 is greater than or equal to J5, then this table is already full. We can't add guests to a full table. Assuming that we do have it, then we can now add it. So the first available row, we're going to have the first available row. In this case, it's 8. I want to get the first available row using A and XL up. That's going to get us our first available row for our guest table row. Then all we need to do is add the event ID in column A, add the table number in column B, the seat number, and the guest name. So that's going to add all the guests. Then we're going to just load the guests. I'm going to run the macro that reloads the guests. We're going to go over that. So what about load selected guest? This one's pretty easy. When I click here, I want to load that guest here. I want to put the name here, and I want to put the seat number here. So that's all we have to do. In sheet B14 is empty, exit this up. B14 is going to let us know what row we've selected, 18 in this case, 17 in this case. So if I have that, I know to put the name here, and I know to put the seat number here. So we do that just with these 2 lines of code. J13 is going to equal sheet 1, J, and B14. So whatever the guest name is going to load, whatever guest number, this is here, number here, guest number is going to go directly into B14. I'm going to take this number, it's going to place it right into actually B15. B15 is going to place it right there. All right, that's it. What about removing the guest? Again, all we need to do, we already know the guest database row using that sum product. I know this guest row, this is on 3 and 4. If I know the database row in this guest, I can easily remove it because I've got the guest list here. So that's just what we do inside the code. So the guest list row, if B16 is empty, then of course we cannot remove the guest because there's no row here. B16 can't be empty. So we're going to run that check. If B16 is empty, then please select the guest to remove. The guest list row is going to determine into a variable B16. That's going to give us a guest. Then all we need to do is sheet 5, delete entire row based on that row, and then reload the guest. So if I want to delete a specific guest and I want to remove that guest, it's going to automatically delete it and reload it just like that. That is it. That's the last one. That's how we do it. So we've gone over how to add a table, how to create events, how to load specific events, how to create brand new events, how to add table information, select on that, and of course, how to add guests. This is going to be an incredible seating chart maker used for restaurants, events, or any type of occasion. I hope you like it, or I just hope you learned some great new tricks and tricks for your Excel. Or I hope you learned some great new tips, tricks, and techniques in this Excel. I hope you liked this training. If you did, I would love if you can pick up the workbook that's 150 different amazing applications for just $56. That would really help us out. All right, thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.